Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another edition of the Endurance School Community Spotlight. Thank you so much for joining us today. We definitely have a star-studded Friday after our morning with Heather Jackson. And this evening, we are going to talk with two athletes who compete at an even longer distance than Ironman. We are here tonight with Amy VT, and Roman Gratteri, both of whom have done an Ultraman before. So Amy VT, many of you guys know, I know her very well. She's my wife. And she has done 3 Ultramans in her ultra long distance career. She's done Challenge Penticton twice, where she was second and first. And she has done Ultraman Israel, where she was first overall, not just for the women, but for everybody. So no stranger to long distance events and how they work. And then Molly, I'm going to kick it over to you to introduce our Olympus questions.
Awesome. So we are also joined here today by Roman Gratteri. So Roman, thank you so much for making the time to come and talk to us. Roman has been working with me for how long? A couple years now?
A 2 years.
Awesome. And earlier in the year told me that that he wanted to try and do an Ultraman. So he got into Ultraman Florida and successfully completed that in just a couple of months ago, in a serious coup of pulling off some intense training and intense racing after a tough year. So congratulations, Roman, and thank you for coming here to share your story with us.
Thank you.
It was an epic victory, yes. Awesome. So I am going to get us started with our first question, and that is, for the uninitiated, guys, what is an Ultraman?
Roman, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I can take this one. So Ultraman is a 3-day event. The first day starts out with a 10K swim and followed up by a 92-mile bike ride. Day 2 is a 171-mile ride, and then you finish day 3 with a double marathon.
Okay, for both of you have to answer this question. After hearing all of that, oh my God, why did you decide that this is actually something that you wanted to do in the first place? So let's go VT first, and then
All right, well, I think the answer for anyone who's done an Ultraman is more inward and psychological than athletic. Bucket lists are kind of how we all got into the sport, right? Someday I'm going to do an Ironman. Someday I'm going to do a marathon. Someday I'm going to do an Ironman. Well, Ultraman is a little bit different than that. It's more kind of, there's a psychosis going on as a common denominator for all Ultraman competitors. For me, bucket list in consideration, my life always kind of seeking, I'm a seeker. The next thing, I picked up a mug in one of our homestays in Penticton for some other race, who knows. And it read Ultraman Canada, and I asked about it, and as our host was describing what it was, before he got to day 2, like Roman just did, I was saying in my head, I am doing this next year. Because the way he was describing it is he was focusing on, it's for really crazy people. It's for those with a lot of grit, who can tackle things by themselves and surmount challenges without a ton of production, and that just that sounded like me. And so I knew before I even put an end to the description of what an Ultraman was that I was going to do it.
Amazing.
And Roman, how about you? Why was this something that appealed to you?
Well, so for me, I mean, I didn't even know what Ultraman was. Till like 2017, and I was fairly new to triathlon in general. First time I actually just heard about what Ultraman was from Rich Roll, and then I read his book, and then VT was actually the first person I actually ever met that had done one. So we had never really talked about it the first two times, and then it just became for me this. It became mental. There's so many positive things that. Like the 50 miler did for me, and just the Ironman distances did for me mentally, that I begin to get this idea in my head of okay, what could 3 days do, and just the idea of really putting it out there and seeing mentally how far I could push it, is what brought me into it. I don't even know to this day if I even would have probably taken the challenge on if it wasn't for VT. I think she kind of was a little push over the hill, or actually big push over the hill to, hey, I see some qualities in you. I see some tendencies in you that are similar to me. Have you thought about this? And I'm just like, oh yes, I've thought about it. So, yeah.
Awesome. That's amazing. So obviously there's not enough time in a day to train for an Ultraman as though you're training for like several Ironman races at once. Can you talk to us a little bit about how training is different from or similar to other long distance events? Like how is this different from training for an Ironman?
So, looking back now, if I look back now, it's easier for me to wrap my head around that. During the time, I didn't know what was going on. I had this idea, or I had this rule more or less that, after getting a few months into this, that I never really looked more than a day ahead. It became a very mental game with myself. So the training was pretty similar throughout the week. Usually recovery stuff on Monday, technical stuff Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and some speed stuff in there. And then you would start out Fridays with the long swim, and Saturdays with a long ride, and Sundays with the long run, making sure you had very tired legs. And that just extended out and got longer and longer as time went.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just made me remember something. We tend to shove all these memories back down because they hurt so much. But in Ultraman training, there's a lot more volume, there's a lot more hours. What you're really missing, what's really different from Ironman, certainly shorter distance training, is the concept of recovery, because you're just always piling it on. You have to, because you have to learn how to run on wicked tired legs, not just a little bit, but trash legs. And so my short elevator answer is, I say, you do Ironman training, except you have at least 3 super long runs, maybe by the sun. At least 3 super long, like 200-mile rides, and at least 3 super long swims, and then your overall volume is up. I've never been able to race anywhere close to Ultraman training or racing because you're never recovering your damaged muscles, and that's kind of part of it. And I think that's the biggest departure from training for competitive triathlon. And what I just realized is that this quartet right here, Molly was Roman's coach for Ultraman, and Chris is my coach for Ultraman. So this question could be better suited for Molly.
Yeah, yep, I'd agree with that.
It was a weird question to ask. Like, tell me about that. What was that like? Too.
I think we'll actually get into that in just a few minutes. But in order to like more adequately describe Ultraman to the people that may not have experience with it, would you guys talk about the crew requirements of Ultraman? How the crews differ from team to team, And then also, what constitutes a good crew member in your experience? So kind of three parts there. Yeah, what the crews actually are, how they function, and what makes a good crew member for you guys.
So I know for my event, it was a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 5. What was recommended to me was 3. 2, I was told can get a little strenuous at times, so I went with 3. And how I approached it was I tried to find. I kind of broke it up into 3 different parts, and I looked at I wanted a real technical, mappy type person, and then I wanted someone that was super close to me. That was my best friend who has nothing to do with endurance sports. Then I wanted somebody that was super motivational, which was like Devin. Mm-hmm. I kind of looked at those 3 areas, and that's how I figured I'd balance it out, which was great. And I think that for a crew member, they've got to be all in 100%. And when I say all in 100%, not 90, not 95, it's 100% all in, because these people are doing nothing but literally chasing you around for 4 days because of prep work before and then after the race, when you're just in shambles and can do absolutely nothing, or at least that was in my case. And getting me on the plane, this was it went as far as that. So the differences that I saw was, I think that it comes down to resources too. Some people, it's a lot to ask from 3 people, and to find 3 people with our schedules now and to coordinate that. I saw some people with just, like their wife and maybe their daughter, and it got challenging. But that's probably for another conversation, but really where the Ultraman community comes in. I think everyone, for the most part, is out there making 100% effort, and so there's a lot of slack being picked up, and you just realize that that's kind of part of that race.
Roman and I are the luckiest Ultraman competitors ever. We both have the dreamiest crew ever. We talk about this all the time, and I do, that we know how lucky we are. It probably could have worked with a little bit less, but we really lucked out. The toughest part about Ultraman emotionally is asking someone to help and sacrifice. That was probably the biggest exercise for all 3 that I did. You're asking someone, as Roman said, to basically obliterate 5 days of their life, obliterate. And, so that was really huge. Then there has to be this remarkable trust component, and you really do need to know someone truly well, because if someone just stood on the side and cheer-led, it wouldn't work when times get really tough. And so the fact that Molly and Chris knew me so well. Spoiler alert! Molly and Chris were my crew.
I was gonna say, your crew sounds great.
That they knew how to adapt their cheering to instructing, or to coaching, or to different intonation. A lot of crazy stuff happened. Bonus for me is mechanical knowledge. Roman mentioned math stuff. That's actually not a joke. You need a dream team like Frodo and the Fellowship of the Rings. Who are you gonna pick to go with you to Mordor? Because they needed to actually navigate uncharted territory, and you need to trust them to show up in places. So those skills don't hurt. Bonus for me, they're both coaches. At one point, I'll never forget, the littlest words of encouragement will take you for 20 more miles of 170 miles. And I'll never forget once Molly said, "You're doing really well in your hydration." And the fact that I know Molly so well and she knows me, made that sink in and give me a tremendous boost. I'm talking 50 miles worth of a boost. But also she's a coach and an expert And so that coming from someone who I know, actually knows about evolution really helps. As Roman said, he would see a mother-daughter team out there, and whew, that might work, but man, I think that'd be tough. He had dream teams, but the most important factor is that trust and knowledge. I mean, it's really this personal thing, because we're talking 5 days of letting it all hang out and trusting and asking. And so that to me is the dreamiest component or trait of any crew member, is full on trust and knowledge of that person.
I have a quick follow-up to both of you guys, to just because I think a lot of people will be like, crew, like, so what are the crew members, what do they do?
What crew?
I mean, anything you can think of about a long race like that. And it's fueling, nutrition, getting you in the right spot. Making sure that you're, I had one person, we were writing down all the nutrition, we were timing it. You got one person doing that, one person making the bottles. There's really a lot. There's a lot more that went into it than I even thought. I think that these guys are super organized and responsible. Like BT said, I did a really good job on choosing my team, and they got along really well, which is important too. But just the approach to the day. What discipline are we doing today? What are all the possibilities of things that could have gone wrong? And then, compiling for me. They really had to get to know me, and I really had to tell them, this is what I do during, my biking, and what I do here and what I do there. Things that, since they're going to be with you, that maybe things you could get away with in a half Ironman or Ironman that no one else would ever know. And so you got to really, key them in on your cues. And when I'm doing this kind of means this, or, if I'm doing this, trust me, this is what I'm thinking. And so the way that I constructed it, one really helpful thing I did is I bought a 3-ring binder like 6 months out from the race. And every time I had a thought or a question or a comment, or I learned something from a workout or race, I'd write it down. And so that was really helpful. I had pages and pages of notes. Then I constructed those and condensed them. And I, obviously met with them, a day before the race, and we just went through each discipline, and that's how we approached it.
Awesome.
They do everything. When you do an Ultraman, the Ultraman competitor athlete lines up and swims and bikes and runs, and every single other thing is taken care of by the crew. Mainly because you start to become so stupid you couldn't handle it anyway, but there's just no time. You're done with day one, and you have to go to bed for not just the next day, but the next day. And let me give you one minute anecdote. Imagine not wrecking your own bike. Imagine not seeing your bike on race morning.
Yeah.
Someone else racks it for you, pumps it up, puts your nutrition on it, picks you up out of the water, and you're delirious, and basically puts you on the bike. That's one iota of a detail of shit that goes down over like 5 days. You show up with your body in Ultraman because your mind is about to blow, and your crew member ushers you through every possible controllable part. Let's not discuss navigation. There's no closed courses in Ironman or Ultraman. Your crew takes care of everything. Other minutia, you get a flat tire. I blinked and my replacement wheel was there. Nutrition, you can't add that. It's basically when you do an Ultraman, you show up with your body, your mental toughness, and everything else down to your chamois, your crew member becomes intimately familiar with, and ushers you through essentially 5 days. It's a huge ask, and the bonding that comes out the other side.
It's 2 of the funnest weekends I've ever had. So Speaking of community stuff, obviously when you decide to do your first Ironman, there's no shortage of people who are going to be there to tell you exactly what their experience was and what they learned and what they did and how you should do it. That like wealth of information is not as deep in the Ultraman world because there just aren't as many people who have done it. Can you tell us a little bit about the community that forms around Ultraman and what the role of other athletes has been in your pursuits in the sport?
Well, VT would probably have a much deeper understanding than I would about the community and the differences. But I mean, coming from a very short span of Ironman from 16, very different. And for me personally, and I'm not being negative, or I mean, I love sport and I love what Ironman has done. I didn't really grasp the noise and distraction that goes on at an actual Ironman event because I didn't know anything different. My first ultra experience was a 50 miler, and it was very calm and very peaceful. And I really left that race wondering if they were all like that, or if that was just my experience for that day, or if it just happened to be that particular race in San Diego I was at. When I began meeting more ultra athletes and going to like a camp prior to this, an ultra camp, realized it was definitely more of the theme. So it's a much more relaxed environment, much more embracing. And I just felt, for me personally, a lot less pressure and a lot less noise in general.
Yeah, essentially anyone who's done a bigger production triathlon, half Ironman, full Ironman, if you've ever sensed anything uncomfortable, anything that's antisocial, ironically, any puffing of feathers, any kind of air competition, anything cold-minded about it being an individualized sport, that's vacant in Ultraman. It's quite the opposite. It is actually a little bit of a cult. It's a bit of a cult.
Yeah.
Because it takes a certain ilk to get there, and so there's an immediate bond having gotten there. So essentially no competition. One year I came in historically close second, and I had no love lost, but I mean that just didn't matter. We're all like trying to get each other across the finish line. One year I came in second, first, and I was more in awe of the woman who came in second than myself because she had such a remarkable run. And because so it's the vibe is so different that I actually wouldn't call it triathlon. I wouldn't even call it anything akin to Ironman. It just so happens that the disciplines are the same, but it's all completely different. Basically, bunch of cycles.
I'm gonna tweak one of our upcoming questions here and ask you guys, what was your most memorable moment from any of your race weekends? Like, what is the thing that you're like, oh, that's the thing that I remember most about?
Boy, I mean, there was a lot. I think it would kind of depend on the mood and what moment. I mean, there were so many, and then I can honestly say there are long periods of the race I don't even recall. There's probably an hour of the swim I don't even remember. There's very hazy parts of the run. For me, I think it was, of course, just the classic, we all ran the last half mile together. My daughter was there, and it just kind of tied everything in, from what a team effort that it was. And that's probably definitely the most memorable moment. Happiest moment would definitely be coming out of that water. I'll be honest. I mean, it was, always in the back of my mind. What is 10K swim? What is that going to do to me? Conditions were way worse than expected that day. So, those two.
I'm glad you broke it down because Roman and I have talked about this because you need to keep up with your little support group. He talked about stretches he can't remember. I think of memories during the race of any of my Ultramans, they're mostly, it's not that they're negative, but they're hard. Because it was really, really tough, traumatizing. I don't think it's hyperbole. It was traumatizing, and you don't want to think back on to when you were desperate. That's the most memorable because it was the most salient, to feel awful that time. Best part, getting out of the water, no question. Lots of funny times too. So I think breaking it down to, most memorable, most poignant, tough part, or most poignant great part, like Roman crossing the line is really helpful. My funniest moment was getting caught peeing on the side of the road by Steve King, who's a famous announcer with the mullet. He's awesome, and he was going hee 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 hee. So that was really funny. I have so many negative ones where they're funny in hindsight, but then not. Like, I did sit down with my legs crossed and my arms crossed in the run and chuck bottles at Molly and Chris. Very funny now. Then it wasn't that funny, but that was memorable.
Yeah.
Pretty funny then.
Yeah.
No, quite funny. Then and now.
And there's I ran out of gears in Ultraman Israel because my DI2 seized up. And there again, funny moments where Chris is trying to fix it, and pretty much all of Israel is descending on him, watching him try to fix this. In the meantime, to get some space, Molly took me away and said, "Hey, I made you a special sandwich for this pit stop," and gave me a sandwich with peanut butter and potato chips while we waited. All that funny stuff. I swear I'm getting somewhere. I believe my most memorable moment, or at least the one that has propelled me onward, was in Ultraman Israel when I was trying to make it up a hill in a gear that was not appropriate for that hill, to say the least. And an Israeli passed me and he was like, "Hey, come with me. I know you're faster than I am. What's going on?" And I yelled, I'm out of gears. My shifters are broken. Stop heckling me. And he said, "This is Israel. Everything is supposed to be challenging." And it's so hokey, but the takeaway there is, it's a little sadistic, if not martyrish, to be like, this is the way we like things in Israel, to be challenging. But they to generalize, what he's saying is Israelis don't only cope with adversity, but they expect it. And in Ultraman, you're going to have adversity. There's no question. And sure, I took that away for like life lessons, but I actually translated that tangibly to my racing. And in every race now, I don't just prep for like, something could go wrong, but I actually expect it. It's so rare to have a perfect race. And so, for instance, I did Ironman Chattanooga, and I got 3 flats. And I hate when people complain about flats. I mean, Rowan and I are do Ultraman, whatever, right? But first flat, I was like, oh, it's my flat. I'm expecting this. Second flat, I'm kind of like, adversity. I expected adversity. Third flat, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm back in Ultraman Israel. This is extremely challenging. I don't know if I will finish, but I've prepped for this, and it directly translates. So that's probably my most memorable one.
That's a great answer. So we unsurprisingly have some really great questions in the chat. I want to get to one of them, but we just got a quick one from Ann Hill that I don't want to move on from your story before answering, Amy. What did you say to that guy when you passed him the next day?
Well, Ann Hill, I'll try to make this fast, but as much as I learned a lot from the grit of my Israeli competitors in Ultraman Israel, I also learned that men there aren't very used to not only women athletes, but women athletes who can compete with them, let alone, surpass them. And as Molly and Chris might recall, there were not a lot of words to be exchanged later because some of them just plain wouldn't talk to me because they didn't understand. And so I never ended up, circling back with that guy because I think he was sulking in the corner. I think that particular guy might take the win that day. So I never got back to him. But I'll never forget what he said.
We have two quick questions, I think, from Matthew Greenberg. The first is this is like a two-pronged question. How did you choose the races that you chose, and would you do another one?
Ooh. So there's only, three. There's, Canada, Florida, and Arizona. And I originally applied for Arizona, and I did not get accepted to that race. But the race director called me like 2 days later and said, apply for Florida. And so that's what I did. It really wasn't. I mean, there's not a ton of options. I just kind of looked to see what was out there, and I knew the race was going to be challenging no matter what, so I didn't get super technical about it. And I thought, okay, Florida in February, that would work.
That's amazing, Roman, especially because everyone note what he just said. Florida in February. Yes, Florida in February is fine. You do realize that meant that Roman did the bulk of his training, not just Ironman training in the winter. I've never done that before, and it was unbelievable.
Mostly indoor, too.
Yeah, so that is definitely one thing I didn't think much about. I got very, very comfortable with the trainer. So probably 90% of my riding was on the trainer. And that became very, very challenging towards the end. And it really started to play mental games for sure.
I remember giving you what was probably a 7-hour trainer ride at one point because it was like snowing. Yeah. There was like an ice storm in Portland, and I was like, I feel bad about this.
Yeah, I think you did a couple 7-hour rides.
Yeah. Sorry about
there's
that,
only so much you can do on the trainer. I don't particularly enjoy watching TV on the trainer. Just, I don't know. Doesn't really do much for me. So yeah, it got interesting.
So is there another one in your future?
I think to be honest, and I talked to BT about this, I mean, I think I would do another race, but I think the commitment from my wife and my kids, it'd be a big ask at this point. It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot for her with the 3 kids. I think it would depend more so on that than it would. I think we'll see. 3 months ago, I would have told you you're crazy. But just everything that's going on right now and the appreciation that I have for being able to complete the race, then seeing the comments on social media in regards to them canceling Arizona, a month out from that race, knowing what those 50 athletes have been doing and what their families have gone through, I mean, it brought tears to me. I mean, it really did. I even looked at Jane. I said, I can't even imagine, like, if I would have been in that situation. So that kind of changed things a little bit for me, I think. just the appreciation and the ability to be able to race, I wouldn't say no.
Roman has changed his tune a little bit since.
You do sense is a trend.
Yeah.
What about you,
and I've experienced it myself. Right after the race, your first thought is, no way, ever. No way, ever. And the biggest reason is the crew aspect. No question. I still to date, this is going to be a measly little attempt again, but I still don't know how to thank Molly and Chris enough. It's more than even just 5 obliterated days. It's just everything. And so I'm not tempted to go, ring their bells again. There's also something about Roman's mind having changed over these past couple months. Right after kind of a loose screw, because Ultraman takes a big toll on your mental and emotional capacity for a while. I think probably physically. You guys are the coaches, you tell us, but I think you burn some brain cells in there too. But then you start to come around and you start to, that seeker thing I was talking about before that Roman and I share, it starts to kind of come back at you almost in an addictive sort of way. And you think, yeah, maybe again, maybe another place. The training's hard to steer down. For me personally, it's, if you plan on doing Ultraman, don't forget that kind of year or half year is Ultraman. You can't dabble in Ultraman. You can dabble in Ironman actually. Something goes wrong, you can do another Ironman. You can race the next weekend, maybe some people do. Ultraman, that's your life. And as Roman mentioned, also becomes the life of those you live with and care about. And so you have to block off lots of big boxes on that big calendar of yours to think about Ultraman again. But the calling's always there because it is such a cult. It's so different, and it's always there.
I think we've got a question from Kirby about fueling.
Yay!
Which is always that's a great question to any distance. Like, what do you, and so if you guys wouldn't mind talking a little bit about what you consumed, what you liked, how your tastes changed over the course of 3 days, getting a little rundown on what you ate to fuel the 3 days would be awesome.
Well, so I'm not a picky eater. In fact, I don't really enjoy eating a whole lot just in general. Mine was actually, so that was good and bad. And so the first couple of days I used Cliff Bars, I used gels, and I used the Power Bar Endurance, and that went pretty well. We're talking about just race stuff, right? Because of the evenings and the mornings, you're obviously feeling there as well. So yeah. I'm an applesauce guy with protein powder in the mornings, and then so that worked for a couple of days. Day 3, things changed for me. Things changed for me about mile 30, 32 on the run, and nothing tasted good. And nothing seemed to be working. About mile 37 was my worst mile. And it became one of the things I learned or walked away from is I probably should have practiced a little bit more for that. But I had a hard time really searching for foods that seemed to work. So salt is good. Rice. I think I was at that point going with Rice Krispie treats and Pepsi. But I consider myself a little bit fortunate on the nutrition side. I'm not super picky, and I don't need a lot of flavor. It doesn't really affect me one way or the other.
one thing I love about talking to people about Ultraman stuff is you can say things like, yeah, it's really like the fourth half marathon that gets you. That's like a really tough patch, that fourth half. That's just hard.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting for me because I had never really put myself through that at that point, right? So I couldn't prepare. You know, how was I going to prepare for mile 37 on day 3? So, you know, again, that's something I did walk away from the race with learning about for sure.
Yeah, there's so much of it that is just it's a complete unknown.
Yeah.
Complete.
Regardless of what the people around you have said or what you learn. Yeah, it's a complete blank zone for the first timer athlete.
For sure.
BT, what did you eat?
Yeah, Molly knows what I ate. Maybe better than I do. I don't remember a lot. Molly knows that. Molly just remembers me screaming a lot, "Nutter Butters!" because every time you see your crew, you tell them what you want next. And then you basically ride for about 20 miles thinking about what you want next and so on. I way different from Ironman. And certainly half Ironman. Lots of differences here. So one is you're fueling yourself for 3 days. So you have to be strategic there. You have to fuel well through the first 2 days to prep yourself for the third day. For me, what that means is implications on caffeine. Because I use caffeine races, so you can't load up. First day of Ultraman, caffeine, not sleep that night. That affects your third day, right? So I had to be a little strategic there. Fortunately, another thing, this is number 2, is that since you're not going to do a marathon or run at all after day 1 and 2, you have some wiggle room, and you can take in a little bit maybe more fat or a little bit more fiber, or you don't have to be as dialed in with the science, the concoctions. And Ironman, you have to because you're going to run right off the bike, so you've got to prep your stomach. But it empowers you to be able to eat some kind of more luxurious items or something you actually crave, like Pringles, Nutter Butters, Rice Krispie treats. Just basically think like a kid and think, what is the ultimate thing last night on earth I want to eat and consume right now. And you've got that wiggle room. Yeah, there's a little bit too much fat in Nutter Butters for like an Ironman. Yeah, there's a little bit too much processing and Pringles or something like that. But you have the luxury on day 1 and 2 of kind of eating whatever you want to. Towards the end of day 2 and day 3, this is where the third thing comes in. You have to have a total variety available in your crew car. You have no idea, as Roman said, what you can possibly get down by then. And it's been crazy what I've seen out there and what Molly and Chris have given me and what I've wanted and not wanted. Unpredictable. And I've done 3 and it's differed every time. At one point, Molly gave me a sausage roll.
Didn't go over well.
Yeah.
At one point, they identified that I just need to drink a bunch of Pepsi or Coke or soda. I've seen people eat crazy things. Some dude out there at one of them ate noodles and strawberries. What the heck?
And cream cheese.
And cream cheese. You don't have that fat in an Ironman.
Noodles, cream cheese, and strawberries. Apparently, it's like a normal thing.
Yeah, that does sound Norwegian.
It might be good.
Fueling that, the biggest difference is you go and you have dinner the night after day 1. It's not like after Ironman where I'm having like beer and pizza or whatever I want, because you're fueling for a 52+ mile run on the third day, starting the first day. So you can't slip up. You can't just stop drinking and taking it in. You got to keep going. And so the importance of having everything available to you to make sure you can get whatever down is important. And then here's where your crew comes in. You finish day 1, or you finish day 2, and it's a little bit of party time. Your crew's there like, here's
So VT, we just got a follow up on Israel food from Kirby. She asks if it was difficult to find what you liked in Israel, or did you bring your own?
That's a great question. Here's another thing that's gritty about Ultraman competitors. Hi, Kirby. Is that you couldn't go there if I don't think you could do Ultraman if you're fussy. You know, Roman said he's not fussy, or if you have dietary restrictions. Certainly not if you're vegan. Have there ever been any vegan Ultramans? I don't know. And so you have to be adaptable. You have to, and I've actually trained my stomach. At one point, Chris actually trained my stomach to be stronger. Like he actually put that in my plan. He was like, drink this concoction and go for a fast 10K after 100-mile bike ride. And so what it took is it takes strengthening your stomach and not being a wimp or a political activist about what you eat. Because I went there and it's just like processed, it's gluttonous. I've been trying to be gluten-free. I certainly wasn't there. You just toss it out the window. And it meant buying a lot of processed food, like picture sandwich cookies or granola, cereals, like just a bunch of stuff that's already pre-packaged. And that was readily available there. It's not like I was having a Metza and hummus out there. Very good, well before and after. But there were stores where I would just buy all that packaged crap, but that's what it took.
We had a question earlier from Enid about, clearly this is a very difficult race physically and mentally. What were your guys' techniques for staying mentally strong during the dark times?
Well, definitely, that's where your team comes into play. And, your team, like I alluded to earlier, them, knowing your cues. There's a lot going on out there. My best friend was there. So, like I said, he knows me really well. And we talked about it beforehand. They know my team, knew me well enough. I think they would know. They kind of knew when I was having a tougher time or not. The training, I've only done one race, so I can't say that, but for me personally, being able to properly follow the training and do what Molly asked of me, that was mentally preparing me for most of it, and being able to stick to the plan, which I think I did fairly well. And there was a lot of challenging days in the training itself. A lot of long Saturdays, coming home by yourself. I did 95% of my training, by myself. VT was super helpful with the swimming towards the end, but the biking and the running, I did all by myself. And so following the plan, listening to your coach, that did most of it for me.
That's great. I don't really know. It's kind of, it sounds so dramatic, but it is a bit survival out there because just thinking of just the swim, it's awful. You can't see the end. And if you can finally see the end, it doesn't get closer. And it's not like I tapped into anything mentally, like I will persevere because of blank. It was more like, well, I have to keep swimming to get, it's like you were dumped off a boat and have to get to shore. Like you just keep going. When Roman was talking about not remembering parts, I'm sure all of us just entered this other mental space that was, a bit flight or fight, where something turned off to help us persevere. So I never dug into a mantra like, I know I'll keep going because of my mom or something. Like, no, you just kind of turn into a robot and get a little psycho, and that actually gets you through. That's a well-functioning defense mechanism, whatever it is. And then you just look over and there's your crew, and your crew's like, go there and go at this pace and drink that. And you're like, what? Okay. Which means to say, not any leg could I have gotten through without my crew just telling me what to do and being there and supporting me. One of the races I did, someone came out and told me that I could win if I picked up the pace a little bit. Try telling someone at mile like 40 something of an Ultraman to pick up the pace. That's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. And so Chris was like, all right, I gotta tell you. And so Chris just came over and he was like, you're on my hip, you follow me, you're running at my pace all the way to the end. And I turned into a robot and just did that. It's I think this is all to say it'd be great to come away and be like, I had this great mantra that got me through Ultraman. No, you turn a little bit loony, and Roman and I would check in with each other, and I think kind of normalizing that. Like, I want to tell anyone who's going to do an Ultraman to normalize this. After a long run, Roman would like text me and be like, dude, I feel really weird. And I'd be like, you're doing it right then. And he's like, no, I feel really weird. I'm like, Ultraman. And so just normalizing that and expecting that. And the rest, you just rely on that crazy switch that flips in your head and your crew.
Yeah. Well said.
VT, your last 3 miles of Ultraman Canada are like evidence of human capacity. That was insane. We have another really important question from Enid, which I think is on everyone's mind. Roman, is that a case of shoes behind you? And can you say more about that?
Can you bring us the favorite pair of shoes?
Oh, they're locked up, I think.
Wait, she also asks, which one has the most mileage on them?
They're all unworn.
That's right.
So it's a hobby I've had a hobby for many years of collecting shoes. This happens to be where the Wi-Fi signal is, so this is where I landed.
And it's the best interview setting I can imagine.
Way overkill. Yeah.
I love it.
This is the best interview we've done.
Yeah, I love it.
Location we've ever had. In a shoe vault.
Yeah, shoe
vault. So I think we're close to wrapping up. I did want to show. I do think this sort of speaks to the Ultraman community. So this is a trophy that Amy got at one of her Ultraman Pentictons. But if you look closely, you will see that is Roman's face. With a "Congratulations, Roman" sticker on it, it really speaks to the small, tight, and wonderful, as VT said, slightly loony Ultraman community. Molly, do you have any other questions or any things that?
Yeah, I just have one quick one, kind of based off of the one that Matthew just put into the chat. So for anyone out there who's considering doing an Ultraman, how do you go about making that commitment? Like, was there a moment when you thought you were ready to sign up? And like, what's your, like, how do you start?
Well, for me, I alluded to earlier. I mean, I think one thing, I based the camps, right? It's kind of where this whole process started in my mind. I began to soon realize going to the camps that as the longer these camps went, the more I enjoyed it. And the more additional runs I would do with VT or the longer rides we would go after. So, I think it's a time commitment. I think, you would want to give yourself a solid year. And I think you would have to know that is going to be your life. I mean, and it is Ultraman life that's what it is. There's not a lot of room in there, especially if you're married or you have kids. There's going to be not a lot else going on, in that time frame. But I will say this, it's a completely different experience, so rewarding, met some great people, very tight-knit community, and there is a lot on the upside, a lot of upside at the end, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, logistically, you do have to have that time, and you do have to have that leisure with your family life, your partner, and then as a beginner exercise for beginning to rely on other people, which again is one of the hardest parts of Ultraman for me, is that big ass, is your first exercise is to not make this your own decision, but have your partner or family be part of that, and also your coach. That's what your coach is there for, to tell you if it's an okay idea, to remind you what you can't do if you train for and compete in Ultraman, because you can't do a lot. There's a lot you can't do, like other races at all. And so your first exercise in becoming an Ultraman competitor is to learn what it's like to rely on other people to plan your life, part of it for you. And that means your family and your coach.
100%.
Matthew, I'm ready when you are. Just let me know. This is awesome. Do we have any more questions in the chat box? I don't think so. Thank you, Kirby, for your cheer. You guys are awesome.
You got in early with her cheer.
Oh, nice. Thank you, guys. This has been one of the best talks we've had on this show. I love it. It's been so great to get to hear from you guys. You know, I've only, Roman, I heard from you towards the end of your days at Ultraman and VT. You didn't really tell me much about how you were feeling while you were racing. So it's really good to get to hear all this stuff from you guys. Thank you for coming on and telling us all this stuff. It's great. And VT, I'm always here if you want to do another one.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, that's part of that community. And if anyone on the team ever decided that they wanted to do it and they needed a crew member, hey, that's part of the giving back part. I'd be more than happy to help someone. It's like I said, there's a lot on the other side.
A Roman crew member could be a very strong addition to any Ultraman race.
Thanks, Molly.
That would be pretty awesome. All right, I think that's all the time we have today. I really appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you so much. And to everybody who is out there joining us on their Friday evening, thank you guys for being here. Your cheers and your subscriptions and your presence and your chats all are the things that keep us going. This has been such a great experience for all of us, and we would not be doing it without you guys. So thank you so much for coming and being a part of the Friday night community spotlight with VT and Roman. And VT and Roman, thank you so much for capping off what has been a really awesome Friday. I really appreciate it. And Bag, best crew member buddy in the entire world. I was sitting there thinking this whole time about how much fun it was to drive a Subaru around off-road Israel. It's an absolutely extraordinary event, and I still can't listen to VT talk about it without tearing up. It's just an unbelievable thing that you guys have accomplished. So thanks for sharing it with us. And all right, I'm going to take us out from there.
Thank
you guys. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us.